enjoyed across the street, it's pretty good. We got there early one time, so it's a pizza.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting, the special meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order. It is 3 o'clock on Wednesday, March 29th. We are in room 209 of the Brookfield Town Hall.
Thank you.
If everybody could just stand, please, for the pledge. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have myself, First Selectwoman Tara Carr, and Selectman Harry Shaker present. I do not see Steve Dunn here. So I just want to start by, and at the table as well, we have Kevin Archer and Jackie Salem. But I wanted to bring everybody together, in a sense, to kind of have a very candid conversation about the future of Center Elementary School. I came into the building 15 months ago, and at the time we were on the trajectory where the school was going to be vacated even earlier than this. Because of COVID and the delays at the new Candlewood Lake Elementary, it's pushed that timeline back a little bit. So that's a good thing or a bad thing. It doesn't matter right now. It is what it is, and it is, I am being told by the superintendent and others that the children will be leaving Center School at the end of this school year. Center Elementary will be used for summer programs through the summer. And at the end of August, the building will be officially no longer a school. There's Steve. We just started. Selectman Steve Dunn just walked in. I started to tell everybody the reason why I wanted this meeting, which was your question to me earlier today. And it's simply to bring everybody together to have a very candid conversation about where we are vis-a-vis the future of Center Elementary School.
Okay, I have a couple questions on that. Why are we calling a special Board of Selectmen meeting for that purpose? We're having a meeting next Monday night. We could easily have that conversation where our residents could show up. They would have more notice. They know the meeting is held on the first Monday of every night. Why are we having it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Why are we not having it this evening when residents who we know work might want to attend?
So it is on the agenda for Monday?
It's the wrong thing to do, is to hold a meeting in the middle of the afternoon on 24 hours notice on something that isn't urgent. This subject is
not
very,
urgent?
it's not urgent. It can wait 5 days till Monday.
It is on the agenda for Monday,
Yeah.
Steve, but we
So why
need-
aren't we having that conversation on Monday with
Oh,
everyone?
shoot, I forgot my.
Where other residents can show up?
Ginny, there's a paper with a list of questions on my desk. Would you mind running and grabbing that and making photocopies?
The
for
purpose of
everybody?
special Board of Selectmen meetings is to address issues that are incredibly important, that need to be addressed right away.
This is incredibly important, Steve.
It
I
is
am the one on the
incredibly
receiving
important.
end of dozens
It
and
does
dozens
not
of
need to be
emails from
addressed
constituents.
right away.
Okay, well,
And holding it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon means many of the people who would like to attend this meeting cannot.
and just so
many
you
of
know,
the people
it's
who would like to
live streamed,
attend,
So in case you're wondering.
They can watch it on TV, but some
Right.
people would like to be here. We saw how many people were actually at the school, right, from the board, from Parks and Rec, everyone. A lot of people are interested in this
Of
subject.
course they are. And
Then
that's
why aren't we
we're here
holding
to
this
talk
meeting at
about it.
7 o'clock tonight
If I
when
may,
people can
if I
show
may,
up?
please, before you berate me anymore, Kevin had asked if we could talk about things. He's got things to show me.
That's
And
fine.
I
I
said,
have no problem with that.
okay, Kevin, I would like for other people to be there because it's not a one-way conversation. There's many opinions, there's many points
There
of
are.
views, there's tons of studies, there's all kinds of information that needs to be shared.
If Kevin wants to meet with you, you can meet with him anytime
And
have
I-
that conversation.
Right.
Why are we calling a special Board of Selectmen meeting 24 hours in advance at 3
It
o'clock in the
wasn't 24
afternoon?
hours in advance, it was on Monday.
It was on Monday.
And Ginny
Okay.
said you never responded. And
I
I
didn't
told
see,
you when
I
you
didn't
called me
get the
this
text.
afternoon.
I didn't get the email.
If you don't want to be
So I
here, you don't
apologize
have
for
to
that.
be here.
It doesn't matter. The point is, there's no need to have this meeting. None whatsoever. It should be, if you're gonna hold it with 24 hours notice, you should be holding it tonight at 7 o'clock when everyone can be there.
Well, not everybody can be there every time at all times.
I think everyone in
We have our fire
Brookfield would
marshal, our
agree with
building
me
official,
that more
our
people
other
can.
officials from town.
Wait.
Let's not forget, this building is gonna be turned over to be a municipal building.
Yes, what if that's
So what's the
nothing
plan,
to do with
Steve?
holding
What are we
meetings.
gonna do with the building?
That's not what we're talking about. We're
That
talking
is what
about
we're
being
talking
open
about.
and transparent with our residents, and you're not
How
doing
much
it.
more open and transparent can we get than a
Good.
special meeting?
Hold-
Live streamed.
Give 5-6 days notice, hold it at our regular Board of Selectmen meeting, which everyone knows when it is. Hold it in the evening, not at 3 o'clock in the
It's on the
afternoon.
agenda. Ginny and I have it.
Then
on-
why are we sitting here right now?
So we can answer some of the questions, so we can make decisions
can't be answered
as
on
a
Monday.
board. There's a lot to go over, Steve.
That can't be done on Monday.
We
That's why we
need
have
to
these meetings posted.
understand it beyond just next Monday. Right now, I don't know what is the future of the Center Elementary School. We've known
one
for
does.
many years. That's right. That's what we're here to talk about.
The time to do it is not at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The
Well, we're
time
here.
to do it is when
We're
people,
here.
residents
People
can be
have
here.
availed themselves to this meeting,
Yes.
yourself included.
Yeah.
So do
And
you
I had
not
to
wanna
cancel the
talk
meeting
about it?
to come to this meeting. This meeting should be held at night so that people, residents can come to it.
We will have a
Most
meeting on
residents
Monday.
work.
And it is on the agenda for
And
Monday.
because you don't want to have a meeting at 7 o'clock at night, it's more convenient for you to have it at 3. Why are
I'm
you
not the
having it
one
at
who
3?
misses meetings, so I don't wanna have a meeting at 7 o'clock,
Then why didn't you schedule it for this evening?
please. Are you gonna participate or not?
I'm going to sit here and listen to you talk.
You're gonna listen to me talk?
That's what you're here for.
I think the reason why it's in the afternoon, I think that it was because it would be more accessible for everyone in the different departments. That was my understanding.
We've done this before. We need
Done
to be
what
as
before?
open and transparent as we can.
That's what we're doing. It's live streamed, Steve. How much more transparent do you wanna be?
I'd like to have it with more notice,
They can
have it
come
at a
on
regular Board
Monday
of
and they
Select
can
meeting,
watch this
or
at
have
any
it,
time,
have
day or
it in
night.
the evening so residents can show up.
They will be
Right.
there on Monday after they've watched these discussions and we can hash out some of these things.
I just don't understand the point of this meeting.
I think that.
If you
If we're
both of you
discussing
are
it
gonna
Monday,
be
why are
dis-
we discussing
I
it
think
today?
both of you
Because
are
there's a
gonna-
lot to go over, okay?
That's
Kevin
why you
said
have
we
Board
had
of
new
Selectmen
information.
meetings.
We just had a walkthrough, which we weren't even invited to. We were an afterthought. How are we supposed to understand what kind of decisions we're gonna make without understanding the full picture?
I agree with you.
Right.
That's why we have Board of Selectmen meetings once a month.
If I
To sit and
can,
have
if I
those
can interject, I
conversations.
think that we're going to end up agreeing to disagree. But I think we should move forward with the meeting.
Well, we're here, let's just move on.
Well, if I can, originally the point of the meeting was that there's an in-house working group of the professionals in the
He
town,
knows.
including the building inspector, the fire marshal, DPW, already looking at the building. So the intent was to bring me into that discussion. And it's just kind of grown since then to.
Yeah, because
now
I'm not
become a
gonna be the
special meeting.
messenger for everybody. I'm already on the receiving end of so much information that I think it's prudent we all sit down and discuss everything as a collective group. That is being transparent and forthcoming. You know, did you share with the world, Steve, the email you sent to me where you imparted your wisdom about what you think should happen here? Now's your opportunity.
No, it's FOIable, anybody can get it,
Okay.
right? I didn't respond to you because that would be having a meeting of the Board of Selectmen. You responded to me, I just sent you my opinion. You should not
Well,
have
what is your
responded to me
opinion?
because that constitutes a meeting of the Board of Selectmen, discussing town business via email between
That's
you
why
and me
I called for a special meeting so we can talk
constitutes a
about
town
it.
meeting. You can't do that sort of thing,
Right.
which you did do. That's why I did not respond
Well,
to you.
you want to share your opinion in email, but not to the public?
Anybody in the public, I'll send it to whoever wants it.
Nobody knows what it is.
I sent it
Okay.
to the Board of Selectmen, I sent
So-
it to the Board of Finance.
So the way I
I don't
saw this
CC the
meeting
entire
going,
residence.
before you came in and started to have a nervous breakdown about having the meeting, is that I'm seeing this repurposing, for lack of a better word right now, in threefold. There's three options essentially. One, which I would love to see happen, but I just don't know how, which is why I passed this list of questions around, is to just have it turnkey. I mentioned earlier the kids are gonna be out at the end of August. So then what, right? It would be ideal for us to just take it over as a municipal space and say, okay, library, whoever, EOC, Parks and Rec, storage, I know the Friends of the Library has been asking me for storage to get rid of their storage container. Whoever wants a piece of it, it would be beautiful to just say, here's a key for you, here's a key for you, here's a key for you, go ahead. But that is not the situation from what I've learned in recent weeks. And up until I started asking our building officials, because again, oh, by the way, let's not forget, this is no longer going to be a school, it's going to become a municipal building. So I brought in the experts who are responsible in town, and that's what they're paid to do, is take care of our municipal space.
We've known this information for 4 years.
Nobody has ever asked them.
We had Tecton go through that building with a fine tooth comb. They gave us a report on
Tecton
the
is not our
condition.
building officials, Steve.
No, they're not a building official, but they are architects and they know how to build buildings. Just like if I ask Kevin Archer, what do you think of this beam, what can we do? They went through all of our buildings with a fine tooth comb. So we do have a report from the architect on the condition of the building. We do.
Yeah,
I
and
think you've seen it.
It's
I
from
think everybody's seen
2020.
it. Right.
It's right here, it's from 2020.
Right.
There's a lot of information in here that might not be the same, because let's not forget, since a decision was made to build CLES, there's been no capital investment into maintaining center school. So has it deteriorated over time? I don't know. I'm not an engineer, I'm not a structural engineer, I'm not a contractor. I don't know. Okay? All I know is that there's all kinds of conflicting reports and opinions and advice and recommendations. So that is one of the reasons why I think it's important, again, to be sitting all together, to have everybody kind of impart more wisdom, hash it out. It's not to be definitive or have a motion or make any decisions. I made it clear, I think the other night at the walkthrough, no decisions have been made. Okay, so the first option would be to have other people just go in and utilize the building as it is today. I don't know if that's an option. I think there's costs associated with that, but we don't have a plan, we don't have answers, we don't have price sheets, we don't have any kind of a way forward if that were an option. The second reason or possibility is for a full renovation, which means I don't think we can have any occupants in the building if we're gonna plan for a full renovation. And the price tags associated with that, from my research, and somebody please correct me if I'm wrong, are anywhere from $5 to $20 million. The Tecton report said 19 million and change, which is now 3 years old, so who knows how much it is. Kevin weighed in recently with a $10 million estimate thereabouts, right, Kevin? So the full renovation is the second option. A third option would be to do what I've spoken to Paul Checo about. I called it mothballing throughout the budget process. I guess there's different levels to mothballing. He introduced me to a new term which is called shuttering. I think it's the least expensive of any kind of shutting down options. And financially, I think that may make the most sense. And if any of you watched the Board of Finance presentation on the budget outlook, and I just got off the phone with Marcia, I said, Marcia, please correct me if I'm wrong. Can we afford another major capital investment? Be it $500,000 to go in, do the bare minimum and occupy the space, or a $20 million new build? She said, we're gonna be very hard pressed to do that. She said it took us years to get into this financial predicament, and it's gonna take us years to get out of it, which was the bottom line up front with the Board of Finance presentation on the budget outlook, for those of you who were either there that night or have watched it since. So having said all that, I don't know how we're gonna get from A to B, yet alone A to Z. So one of my questions would be, to start things off, what do you want? What does the library want? I know what Tara Carr wants. I want a new library / community center. But there's a big difference between wanting something and having it. So somebody needs to kind of speak up here and say, you know, what are we gonna do? Because in my mind, I think we as a board, quite frankly, need to turn this over to the municipal building committee.
So
If you
I
go
think
back to their chart, to the statutes, that's what their charge is.
the ad hoc committee, Bob Sims headed it, made a determination that the best uses for this building would be Parks and Rec and Library. I agreed with that. I thought those were the two highest, best uses for this building. The next step would be, and I think the library has done this, and Parks and Rec has done it, the Parks and Rec Commission has done it, what programs do we want to run in this building?
First question on that checklist
Right.
right there.
And I think we're aware of what Parks and Rec wants to do, and I think we're aware of what the library would like to use the building for on an immediate basis. Let's say the day after Labor Day, the day after the schools give up this building, right? I don't think any of those things that were mentioned actually would cost a lot of money right now. We're going to have fixed costs on this building. Whether we completely shut it down, drain all the lines, shut it down completely, or we maintain it at some level. We heat it at a certain degree, we maintain the lighting, we maintain the security systems, which I would think we would want to do, all of those things. We need to delineate all of those costs and see where that would get us. My personal opinion, again, this is my personal opinion, I think we should start using the building immediately. Parks and Rec could go into the gym, outline pickleball courts, and start collecting money for fees to rent pickleball courts. I think we should emphasize programs, this is just my opinion again, emphasize programs that would generate revenue to help offset the cost of the building. I believe that Parks and Rec could run programs and library could run programs that would at least offset the costs of running the building. We don't know, we'd have to look at the final detail. I think a lot of people are very invested in Center School as an institution in this town, as the oldest wood school building still in existence, still being used. I believe that the building, like any of our buildings, and we've run into this before many, many times, we simply did not maintain our buildings to the level we should have. When we did Cadigan Park, we had buildings there, it was cheaper just to take the entire thing to the ground because we did not maintain them. Over the last 6, 7 years, we have started to maintain buildings. So we need to decide, one, what programs we want to run in these buildings, right? What library wants, what Parks and Rec, what other organizations might want. They might want just a room to meet in. And then determine if there are any costs associated with that. If they are, how would we offset those costs? And then come up with a plan. Now, our long-term plan for the building is still up in the air. As you said, we do have financial restraints that we are facing. We knew these when we built Candlewood Lake Elementary School. We knew we would have a tight budget with a debt bubble for a few years. That will open up a little bit of room once we're finished paying for the high school, but it's not going to open up the kind of room that we want or would desire unless the residents are willing to take on more debt. And right now, I don't see a lot of appetite for that. We have to look at that very, very carefully. But we need to find out exactly from Parks and Rec and from Library, I think those are the two main users, what exactly do you want to use the building for today?
Well, if you go back to this sheet, that's the first question. Which
Yeah.
program want to use the space? Is it new or existing?
Right, and then we have to say, okay, what will that cost to do?
Well, there's a lot more just than cost, you know. Will it require additional employees? Will we make or lose money? If, how much? Will they need furniture? How much is the furniture? What are the utility costs? Water, sewer, electric, oil, security, etc. What are the estimated maintenance operating costs? We've got janitorial issues, lighting, electric, plumbing, HVAC, garbage removal, roof leaks, anything else that could come up. Can the portion of the building being used be isolated from any other portion of the building? Or will access have to be provided by the unused portion of the building? What immediate capital improvements, including code improvements, are necessary to move in? Paint, windows, roof, hazmat remediation, paint inside and out, flooring, lighting, ceiling tiles, plumbing, HVAC. What are the capital improvement costs? You've got other things with sprinklers, ADA, insulation, restrooms, flooring, walls, the parking, walkways, wood rot on both siding and structural. It's just, the list goes on and on. So, and then who's gonna manage all of these things? So there's a lot to consider, and it's easy to just say, yeah, okay, Parks and Rec and Library, go ahead, it's all yours. Right now, again, there's no, where are the answers to these questions?
Excuse me. Parks and Rec and Library, under the building code, they are considered business use. So if they move into center school.
Do you wanna please come to the table, Debbie? Thanks.
If they will move into the center school and they will use the offices, which are considered business, no big deal. They can move in. But once they use the educational areas, that's a change of use. Now automatic, they need to apply for a permit, they need to meet the handicap accessibilities.
I'm sorry, say the last part again?
Handicap accessibility.
Yeah. If the Parks and Rec
Right.
and library, if they will move into the education use, there's a change of use from business, from education to business. So automatic, the code wants us to.
I would argue that the use is not changing.
So here's,
It is.
so the code says,
Wait a minute, what do we do with kids? We educate them, we teach them, we train them, we show them things, we do sports in the building.
They use
Steve,
Right.
it doesn't go by actual use, it's by code definition. So Jason and Demi are correct. It's a change of use by code, by definition. So it has to undergo a full review.
however, with the, so it is a change of use because it's change of occupancy.
Yeah.
And education has a specific definition in statute for kids, certain amount of hours a day, certain services. Change of use, like business, storage, whatever we're gonna do, is obviously that. However, based on the restrictions and the permissive nature of an occupancy, there's certain things we can do because it's more stringent requirements for education. That's not a blanket statement for the entire building.
But on average, right.
It depends what features we're looking at, and depends what we're looking at. It depends, so for example, business use, yes. Now we're gonna get into storage use, it's something completely different.
So we would need Parks and Rec and Library, those two groups right now, to come and say, this is specifically what we would like to do.
What we're gonna do in each given space, what we're gonna store there, what we're
We
gonna
can do that,
conduct,
right?
who's gonna be there,
Right. Well,
how we're gonna furnish it.
The intent is to fully occupy the building, it's fully.
Is
Over
that now,
time.
now? Are you talking about now?
Well, what we need is to hire an architect to say
Okay,
how
hold
to.
on, let me.
I thought we just
stop,
hired tech.
stop.
that
My
was a
thought for
different
this purpose, my concern is, what are we gonna do with center school now? What are we doing now? Not studies for what we're gonna do.
That's what
Let
this
me- let
meeting
me-
grew
let
out of
me-
control.
Let me, Kevin, let me finish. What are we gonna do now? Whatever we do, we can't do so much that the maintenance and what we have to do is gonna overshadow any revenues we would make. So my initial plan was to think of using the smallest part of the building now that we have to use, which in my estimation was the main office, the kitchen, the cafeteria, and the gym, that section, and maybe the one hallway, this one, and the library. And my thought was maybe if we could bring the children's library or program over there, if that's possible. Use as little of that as we have to. My question is, number one, can we do that by code?
It all depends what you're doing.
Right, right.
With all due respect,
No, I'm not
there's no-
finished yet,
there-
Kevin, let me finish
There's
my
nobody in this
thought.
room that can answer that question.
Let me finish my thought.
There's nobody in the room that can do
Let
this.
me finish my thought
Go ahead.
with
Go ahead.
respect.
Go ahead.
That was my thought, is to do it that way. So my question is, if we're going to use a partial use of that, what do we have to do? If something happened with the schools, and Hartford said, look, we've got a moratorium on any building in school now, we can't finish this school until next February, hypothetically. The kids are gonna be in there. I mean, they're gonna live with the roof, they're gonna live with the plumbing, they're gonna live with whatever. So that's my question is, what would it cost to use a smaller amount? The more space we use, the more overhead and the more repairs we're gonna make. And it's gonna price us out of the business.
So, to your point, Harry, I think what you're saying is each of the organizations that wishes to use the school needs to come to the town with specific uses for specific parts of the building, right?
Right.
And then we go to building, we go to fire marshal, we say, are these allowed under business use? Is there any changes that need to be made, right?
Yes,
And do it piecemeal.
right.
We can't just say, okay, library, if I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, we can't just say, okay, library, you're getting this portion, do whatever you want. And Parks and Rec, you take this portion, do whatever you want.
Right.
It has to be incremental, each use needs to be reviewed and approved,
I agree with you.
So
right?
that-
Does that make
that's
sense?
correct.
And then, when we do that, let's say Parks and Rec wants to make the gym and put down, what's the paddleball courts?
Pickle.
Pickleball.
Yeah, pickleball courts, I'm sorry, I get that backwards all the time. How much does it cost to put the pickleball lines down? How much does, I mean, actually, dimension the expenses versus what possible revenues we can get. And I think Parks and Rec has more of an opportunity for revenue than the library.
The library doesn't produce any revenue, from what I understand, is that
It's a
correct?
state statute, we're not allowed to.
Yeah.
The library's
Yeah.
not allowed to.
So-
And by vice versa, Parks and Rec has to charge.
Okay,
I
so
think
let's
it's
just
two
flash
different
forward.
plans here.
Let's flash forward. If we
Yeah.
say, okay, Parks and Rec and Library, you can occupy it, you're approved, go ahead. Then what? We're in there,
But-
and we still have major capital problems that will have to be addressed at some point.
I
Those
think it-
problems are gonna exist whether somebody uses the building or not.
Right, so,
Which is why
I think there's two
demo
different
isn't a
discussions
fair
here. One is the current, like, short-term use, what are we gonna do right now?
In the
But
budget,
then-
we have money
right.
to shutter it.
Okay, and then, what's the long, you know, like, what's the long-term use? We're not just gonna use this little part of the building forever and just leave the rest of it.
Right.
And I discussed this with you the other night, which I think is Kevin's reason for saying, whenever we do it, that we need a study, because I think we need to decide ultimately what do we want to do with the building, hire someone to do the study, do the research, come up with the plan, and phase the plan, so that we can do it incrementally. But you can't just say, ask these two departments to say, what do they want to do? Maybe that's what their needs are now, but we have this whole other building that also, we always, the discussion is around the negative, like, what are we gonna, we can't do, we don't have, let's look at it like, we have a property that's worth over $7 million, right? We have a building that's worth north of $5 million, okay, so we have something. The children have been going to school in it, right? So it's not in this horrid disrepair, or they wouldn't be allowed to be in the
Well, it
school.
must be in pretty bad shape if we're giving them a $70 million new school.
Well,
That's a
that's
different
that's a
question.
whole other
That's a
discussion.
different-
I don't even
different
want to go there.
discussion.
It's a different,
Yeah.
which we've discussed, right? So, I think that that's how we have to look at it. What are the short-term uses, just to start with, and to maybe generate some income? But in the meantime, planning takes a very long time.
Yes, it
So
does.
I think that we can't say, all right, we're gonna do this, and say, okay, we don't have the money, and 1 year goes by, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years,
And we're paying
7 years, and we're
$80,000
a year to
carry it.
keep that whole thing closed. The numbers don't make sense, you know, when you can
Right.
do a study for 150,000 or 200,000, you know what I mean? It doesn't make,
Or you could build new.
well, to build a new building, I will guarantee you is gonna cost more money. That I know for sure.
But my point is whether we have plans for the future. You know, I think what we're talking about is lobbying for a $150,000 appropriation for a study. So regardless of regardless whether we get that money or whether you don't get that money, what are we have to look at what we're gonna do with it now because
Absolutely, short-term plan,
it's 6 months or whatever.
definitely.
I agree
No,
with
I
that.
totally
Short-term-
And
agree.
that's the urgency.
It's
Well,
the
I just
short-term
want- Can I just
plan.
say something? It is a short-term plan, but I think everybody's forgetting about all the expenses that go into that short-term plan.
Well, right.
Can you
For
come,
example-
can you
yeah,
come to
sure.
the table, please? Is there
If
a
you
microphone on?
move into that building today, or once the kids move out of the school, and the boiler goes down, all of a sudden you have a couple of $100,000 worth of expenses that you didn't anticipate.
Take some.
If
The
you're-
Board of Ed estimated it at 66,000.
For what?
The Board of Finance estimated
Well,
it
you're
at
just doing-
100.
For what? The-
New boiler.
All right, a boiler, $100,000. All the wood on the exterior of the building is rotting. In order to keep that building in.
Absolutely not true.
Absolutely
I gotta
not.
stop you there, Ralph, that's not true.
Well,
As a
oh,
structural engineer with 35 years' experience, that's
Me
not
too,
true.
it's not
Okay,
true.
Don't
not
scare the
all
other people
wood.
at the table
Okay,
here.
not all of the wood is rotting. Some of the wood is
not
rotting.
even
Okay, but we're still, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves.
We're way ahead.
We are
We're
way
off
ahead of
track.
We're
ourselves.
not
Way off
talking
track.
about 10-year maintenance.
No, I'm not. I'm talking
I-
about today.
I
The
think what
issue
we're
is
talking.
this, is there's no architect providing a plan to phase this, to get into the building in phases. That's what we need, whether it's a $150,000 budget,
Or
capital request, or
50,000 to start,
50,000.
whatever.
There needs to be a plan, there's nobody in this room that can do that.
I agree with
So
you.
even the library people can't do that.
We have
This
nothing
is-
to price.
This is, after the tour the other night, the library staff got together and started making a bullet point of what they can do in the building now. They did it on their own, they did this,
But
the
if-
library staff.
okay, if-
Yeah.
We
I
had,
haven't seen it.
we had an NLC meeting new library committee meeting
Have
last
you guys
night.
seen it?
Anyone hear me on
It
the?
was just, we just got it last night at the
That's a
NLC. What I'm
really
telling you
good
is,
start.
they are already trying to think of how can we get in, what can we do there? They were thrilled to walk through the building, they loved the building.
To Harry's point, at minimal cost, I think Harry has a very good point. What can we do starting the day after Labor Day that will not bankrupt the town?
The other part
That
of
we
this
can
is
do
we
it
need an
reasonable.
architect to get in, because these two gentlemen need to see drawings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, they're not gonna allow this without a building permit.
I
and
do,
a set
but
of
as
drawings.
a taxpayer, after seeing a $700,000 wall go up at Wisconsin, $1 million locker room at the high school, now how many millions of dollars are we gonna spend here? And I have little kids in school. I have little kids that go to that school. I've had people that have gone to that school, and it's almost embarrassing. But, I mean, so, are we gonna start maintaining it, or are we gonna start maintaining buildings? And the other fact is, what maintenance have we put in that building in the last several years since the inception of Candlewood Lake School? Because, I mean, walking through that and then talking to facilities from school, you get different opinions. You read this study, you look at numbers. I don't know how we're gonna afford this as a town. And as a taxpayer, I'm scared.
Well, you can wear one hat at this meeting or the other.
Yeah.
I just have one
I
thing
mean,
to say.
you got both, so.
We can ask for your professional opinion as a
Let's
fire
let,
marshal.
let's let Ralph.
If you want to talk as a
Give us
resident, you're
a-
I also- I said as a
Emergency
resident.
management.
Can we give Ralph 2 minutes?
I just want to say one thing. If you don't want to hear what I have to say, it's fine. But in order to occupy that building today, it's going to require potentially $1 million to occupy that building today. The boiler's on the verge of going. The oil tank needs to come out. The structure needs, all the rotten wood needs to be replaced, and the building needs to be painted. There's roof leaks. There's hazardous materials in the building that have to be removed before people move in. Once people move in, it's going to be increasingly hard to.
Wait a minute, let
renovate
me
the
stop
building.
you there for
That's
one
not true
second.
again,
So
Ralph.
you're
Sorry,
saying,
it's not true, because the school
you're
is
saying we have a
annual
dangerous
professional
building
assessment.
today, and we allowed our children to
Yeah,
be in a building
exactly.
with hazardous
I didn't say it's
materials.
dangerous.
I'm sorry, I think that's an
Sorry, I
overstatement.
never
I don't
said-
think anyone in this room
Steve, you're
thinks
putting
that
words
that
in my
building is
mouth.
unsafe
You're
for our
putting
children.
words
If we
in-
did, shame on
You're
us.
putting words in my mouth. I never
Ralph, you
used
said
the
those
word.
You
things
just
have to
said there
be
were
done
hazardous
before the
materials
town
that need to be
occupied.
removed.
That's
Oh,
not
my
true.
code.
Hold on, guys.
My code
Listen,
is not-
listen.
I'm not-
Hold on,
I'm
Ralph,
not
listen,
fascinating.
Why don't we
listen.
let Demi tell us what
Listen,
needs to be done by
people.
code, right?
If someone
Demi
is
knows the code.
talking, I have to experience this on the Board of Education. I experience it on the Board of Selectmen. You sit and you listen.
Right.
You wait until the person is through, then you can rebuttal or you can agree or disagree. But to sit and scream back and forth is childlike. So please give him an opportunity to speak. I have issues with some of the stuff he's saying.
I
Let
never-
him speak and give him.
Thank you, Harry. I never used the word unsafe. I said once we start the renovation, those things have to be done. I never used the word unsafe, Steve. And is the building becoming unsafe? Yes, it's becoming unsafe. That's why we're building a $70 million school. Is it good for temporary use right now? Absolutely. But once the children move out, there are things that need to be done that are going to cost a lot of money. I'm not saying I want to kill the project. The Board of Finance funds the project. I'm all for it. I'll go for it. But based on it, my analysis was done based on the fact that the Board of Finance told us no. They basically gave us a presentation that said they're not going to fund any large new expenses coming down the pipe because our bond rating is going to go down. And I was asked to do an analysis of the building based on that, and that's how I came up with my conclusion. But to say that a program can move in there tomorrow at a relatively no cost is just not true. What you're saying is not true. I have a list of things that need to be done. Like I said, I partially list them already. Just the things that I mentioned, you're probably in the $2 million range. Just the things I mentioned. And then the utility costs associated with just running the building for those things is about $80,000 a year, they told us. And that doesn't include all the other soft costs that go along with running a program, which could easily push that over $100,000 per year. So now you're talking about an investment over $100,000 per year just to run the programs. And then capital improvements, which would probably total over $1 million easily short term, and then a 10-year plan that would include capital improvements that would range in the $10 to $20 million range. So I'm just telling you, those are the facts. I'm not giving you my opinion whether it should or should not be done, but those are the facts. And you can disagree all you want, but those are the facts. Those are what your reports say. You could say whatever you want, but I read the reports. I'm quoting basically the numbers off of the report. It's not a $10 million cost to rebuild, to renovate the building. According to Tech Time, which you quoted, it's a $19.4 million project. According to Tech Time, the library could do with a 40,000 square foot building at a cost of $14.7 million. And that would give you a brand new facility as opposed to renovating a building for $19.4 million. And that's what the report said.
Yeah, but a few points. One, You stated that there are hazardous materials
There are.
that have to be removed before people can use that
No, I
building.
didn't.
That, I quote
If
you
renovate-
exactly what you said.
If
Bob.
you renovate the building, Steve, if you renovate, it's
You
required.
didn't say renovate.
Yes, I did, I'm saying it now.
Okay, so you stand corrected then. Because I can't believe that we would have a building that is dangerous to our children.
I never said it
and we
was
allow
dangerous.
Well, the way you said
No,
what you
it's not,
said.
Steve, you're putting words in my
Steve,
mouth.
he didn't say it was dangerous.
Okay,
At this point.
okay, we all agree right now that the building is safe for the children. Let's
Okay.
move on, what's the next
So
one?
when we move on, we get back to the conversation. What will we do with the building, both short-term and long-term? Now, different people can have different opinions. My personal opinion, we looked at rehabilitating Huckleberry Hill Elementary School. It would have been, I think, $55 million, but you know, the minute you go into a building, there are gonna be expenses you didn't anticipate. Those always come out more. Typically, am I right, Kevin? If you quote 55 million, it's not gonna be, we did this with the high school.
In the existing.
30 million became 35 million, and that became 60% of what was originally requested in the high school because of all the additional work that needed to be done. So I think what we need to do is somehow form a group that says, okay, short term, this is what this group wants to do with the building. This is what library wants to do, short term, 2 to 3, over the next 2 years. We are going to have some fixed expenses with this building, regardless of whatever we do.
Which is why it might be best, as they said, for pragmatics on page 8 of this Tecton report summary from 2020, or I'm sorry, the ad hoc committee summary. Pragmatically, you can renovate a building that's 83 years old, but is it financially feasible?
I agree,
Or
but that's a longer term
reasonable.
decision, I agree.
It may have good bones, but a complete tear down may be a better financial option. And then it could be torn down.
Yeah,
This is out of
if and when
the
we
study.
make a decision to build a new building, then we would make the decision, do we tear it down or do we rehabilitate it, renovate?
Well, if
I
we're
tend
looking
to
at it
agree
from a
on build new.
financial standpoint, tearing it, shuttering it and tearing it down at the earliest opportunity is probably the most financially responsible within the next 6 years. And then we have a clean slate to build a new library.
I don't agree with that. Remember, we're losing Huckleberry Hill Elementary School, we're losing Center School, we're losing 2 facilities that both the library, the playhouse, lots of organizations use now. And we're going to one building, CLES. And we're not looking at all the programs, like when we were there the other night, Brookfield Playhouse was doing their practices in the gym. I didn't know
That's
they
a
did
Parks and
that.
Rec show.
No, that wasn't Parks and Rec.
Into the Woods is Parks and Rec.
I was told by somebody who's on the board that that was the Playhouse, and the Playhouse uses the building to,
The show is Into the Woods. My friend is the director. That's my daughter's Girl Scout troop.
well, no matter. There are lots of uses for this building, and simply say to demo it is the most financially responsible decision. I'm not sure that's true, and that's why we need to understand what we can use the building for right now, what we can use it for in a year, and what those things will cost. We know the building needs a lot of work, we know that. Even to keep it as is, it's going to require maintenance. We have not done
And money.
some of the work, yeah, that's,
Lots of money.
yeah. But just demoing the building, I don't think is a good option. I honestly, I don't believe, because we don't have enough information. We don't have the specifics on it. So
We do have the specifics in the ad hoc report, the Tecton report, and now the latest and greatest Doyle and Kaufman report, which all indicate, and I just read it to you, they say it themselves. Would a complete tear down be a better option? Does it make better fiscal sense? I think we would all be mistaken if we didn't know the answer to that is yes.
But we're like the guy who has a 20-year-old car, which I happen to own one, right? Do I buy brand new, or do I nurse this along, change the brakes, change the oil, gotta put a new power steering pump in, do I nurse it along? Because that's what I can financially do versus buying a brand new
And
car.
as far as revenue
But
being
just
generated,
taking the car and throwing it out
this is not a car, Steve.
eliminates, it's a very similar
Not a good
analogy.
analogy.
It's a similar analogy.
Not a good
Just
analogy.
throwing the car out means I don't have a car at all. Do we nurse it along? Do we maintain it? Do we try to bring some things in? You know, I may make poor analogies, but I want everybody to understand this. To just demo this building, I don't think is a responsible
I'm not
decision.
suggesting that that is the course of action. I am suggesting there's 3 viable options, but there's no plan for any one of them or costs associated with any one of them.
I agree with you.
There
That's
are,
why we
Doyle
need-
Coffin has started that process, and they have some
Yeah,
some
and here's their price
pricing.
list, and it's $10 million. That's what they're proposing.
Just for the line.
Nine
That's the number we're
point
talking
95
about.
million.
Right, that's what we're talking about. isn't
For
it?
what? Is that to get people in there to use it and create revenue? The revenue is never gonna give us a reimbursement for that amount.
Well, there's almost no revenue generated
Right,
by
we can forget the
government
revenue.
facilities
We can
ever.
forget the
That's
revenue.
not what government is for.
We
I
can
mean, this is a
forget the
municipal
revenue.
project, so
That's right.
revenue's not really a factor. Parks and Rec does charge for their services, at times, so,
Well, everyone keeps
The
talking about
library's
the
not allowed
revenue.
to
It's not
charge.
gonna produce, it will produce some revenue, but not, we should not even consider the
what
revenue.
you have is a building that's 54,000 square feet. It's not a brand-new building. Brand-new construction is running somewhere around $400 a square foot. So that's a $20 million plus brand-new building, if it was brand-new, if we had to build that now. It's worth $100 a square foot, at least. That's 5.4 million assets sitting there that the town owns. And to just plow that away is throwing away $5.5 million to go back to ground zero simply because we can't figure out a way to get in now?
Well, is
That's
this,
an
would it be
embarrassment
another
to
high
me as
school
a-
situation? Because when, from what I understand, when back in the day, when we're still paying on the debt of the high school, when the decision was made to renovate, now, flash forward to today, we're paying more than it would have cost to potentially maybe just build a new high school back then.
That's where you do the proper planning, the proper execution.
You're absolutely
and-
right on
and
that.
proper
So
maintenance
is
going
this gonna
forward.
be another high school situation?
No.
I don't
No,
know.
because we're not
It's a
asking for $15 million to renovate the building. What's being
10.
asked for,
We're asking for
10,
10.
12,
You also
whatever.
have to look at this, it's a very simple building. It's the largest ranch house you ever saw.
Yeah.
It's 54,000 square foot, 1 story, with 2 little basement areas and a stage.
And an
That's it.
attic?
An attic, but that's every building generally in the Northeast has an attic. That's just where we are for snow
The only
shedding.
reason I know that is because you wanted to go into it.
Right. But, so it's very simple structure, very simple. So it's very easy to maintain, to renovate, to modify. It's very simple. And the whole east side was built in 1995. It's only 28 years old, which is probably younger than most of our houses. And you wouldn't be tearing that down just because you need to replace your kitchen, or need to redo your bathroom, or need to pave your driveway, or replace the boiler. It just doesn't make any sense.
And all of that's fair, and I respect
So
all of that.
why can't we
and I
find a
think
way to
renovating it
move
is a
forward
viable option.
positively and move in?
Because we don't have the money. How are we gonna do
Well, if
that?
it's a money thing, then say that. Don't say
I've
demo
been
it.
saying that.
Then-
That's
then-
what I said right
then-
out of the gate.
But don't just say demo it. That's not the decision. Mothball it.
No, I'm saying demo is an
Mothball it
option.
and phase getting in. Don't just, no,
We'll
demo
mothball it and then go back and renovate
and
it?
phase getting in. We need to hire an architect to give us the plans to phase getting in and to satisfy building code requirements.
You
So we
just said
need that-
mothball it and then do the renovations?
No, phase getting in. We were talking
So
at the
what are
same
we gonna
time.
do in the interim between the time we can afford a renovation and the time the kids vacate it?
Well, we're coming up with ideas
Plan.
of how we can get in, but the planning part is really what really should be done. But the library, and I know Parks and Rec is also trying to come up with ideas of how we can occupy it as quickly as possible, areas that we can,
And
Start.
we need to know all the costs associated with that plan.
but you have to start
We
somewhere,
have to have
Terry.
a
You can't
plan
just
to
say,
get the
That's why,
costs.
that's why we're here.
overnight, we have a
because
book to provide you and we have all the information.
I've got
We
hundreds
just
of
told it.
residents emailing me, telling me how badly they want pickleball and adult programs and that the library should get the funding for the study. I'm one person. We
But-
all
but
need
You
to.
But do
asked
you
for
see-
town feedback. You asked for town feedback.
Right.
You
So-
asked for that. So
To me, that means they're willing to,
at our
maybe they're
first
willing
meeting,
to
you said, or does the town support
pay
this?
a little more for that.
You asked for us to prove that the town
What we need to
supported
do
this.
as a board is decide how we're gonna collectively move forward. Is
I
it
think-
just for us to say, okay,
No, it's
go
not.
forward and do great things and come apply for a permit?
I think to your point earlier, we don't have enough information
don't have the
to make that determination.
right.
I think what we need to do is have Parks and Rec, Library, and anybody else who wants to use that building to come to us, tell us exactly what specific use they want, how they're gonna use it, and then we might need to go to an architect, or we go to building and fire and say, listen, the Boy Scouts want to use this room for this purpose for a year. Is that allowed?
Well,
Or
then you
does
start
something have
handing
to
out
change?
keys, and then we've got other
No, I'm
overhead.
not, I
and
don't want to get into
janitorial
that
and-
detail right now. Just,
Wow.
we have to figure out something. We're sitting here having a conversation, and we're having a circular argument here.
There's no argument.
But
it's
at a
just-
minimum, it is a change of use. At a minimum,
Yeah.
there has to be some kind of drawings
Right.
to prove to our land use office that we are doing this correctly and it meets code requirements for this new change.
Yeah.
Now, as Jason started to say before, it is somewhat of a step down because it's, education is
the
high.
highest. Right, it makes sense.
Emergency response,
Yeah,
hospitals,
yeah.
police, those are at the top level. This is education, and then business use, and it goes down, residential's at the bottom.
Mhm.
Kev, can I, oh God, are you through?
So what I'm saying is, it shouldn't be that
That's
hard to
just
do
for
the
that.
code
I'm not-
analysis to get
I
in.
can't speak for Demi and
But again, it's a simple building, it's concrete slab on grade except for the two basement areas. So it has egress all four sides, it has fire truck access all four sides, it's sprinklered already. I mean, there's amazing, great properties that this building, that this asset our town owns has already. It's just, can we prove that it meets the new situation? I think that's relatively easy. I think the hardest part actually is gonna be bathroom count. Do we have enough fixtures
And
to?
handicap access period.
Well, the handy.
Luckily, it's all one floor with
So,
multiple egress points, all at grade. So, yes, we will prove it
With
for the
bathrooms.
new use,
yeah.
but I think it's gonna be
It
a
will be
check
less
off.
stringent from education to business.
Right.
Yes,
It's a
yes.
downgrade.
For instance, when we were toured the other day, it was brought up, why don't you guys just move into St. Joe's? Immediately, it's a two-story building.
Mhm.
So right away, you need an elevator, you need more access, you need bathrooms both levels. So that's actually a more difficult situation for us, for the
Makes
library and
sense.
Parks and Rec.
That's
Even
actually
though-
not a bad idea either, because if we do go, I'm just saying, throwing this out there, if we do go to mothballing or shuttering, you know, we could always rent other space. If the space, and the only thing I've heard from the library is that it's too small, there's a space issue. That is the problem that we're facing at the library, from what I understand.
But then why rent it and spend money and give it to someone else?
Because
when
it's cheaper
when we have a
than
building?
maintaining a
No,
building
you have to have
long
the
term.
libraries stay where they are, use rooms as we're allowed to use rooms, and then can just
Right.
expand in from there, rather than paying money to some other facility, to rent the
But
facility.
right now, we don't know what the costs are with keeping this building operational in the capacity that it wants to be used for.
Well, the operational costs you should have from the Board of Ed.
Right.
No, because it's we're not gonna have kids
So
in there,
we're
we're
gonna
not
run
gonna have
that
people in
building,
there from
heating
7 in
costs
the
is gonna be
morning
the
till.
same.
We
The heat
we
efficiency,
should
whatever
be
the
able to
building is.
find out
Yeah.
I think it's by
Yes.
from the
operation,
schools,
but also
exactly, how much do
capital
you,
improvements.
how much
Yeah.
electricity do you use right now?
Capital.
How much heating do you use right now? How much security do you use? What does your Wi-Fi cost? And then at least we have a base.
Yes.
And we know that would be the high end, right?
Right. Because
The floor recognizes every
Yeah.
Kevin, would it be feasible to, my concern, when you say you have drawings for now, you know, whenever we start to progress into the building, are you talking about final drawings? This is what we want, we're gonna project to do this in the near future, let's say renovate a certain area, which is going to be, continue to be part of the new project, or are you talking about just, let's say you wanted 5,000 square, I'm just using a number,
Yes,
5,000
yes,
square feet.
yes.
Do kind of a study, what do we need to do that at 5,000 square feet to make it usable? Because here is my thought. If the library, I really would like to keep this to the Park and Rec and to the library and not open it up to the entire town. Go to the library and say, with total space being an issue, we really want to try to keep it as condensed as possible. What would you need? How much room? What would you like to do in certain rooms, and how much do you need? Not 20,000 square feet, so that we could use this at minimal cost, and hand that in, and have Park and Rec do the same thing, and then we can give it to our, professionals here, the inspectors, building, Ralph, and let them analyze. Okay, here's what we think it's going to cost to do that. This way, the library's getting use of it. Park and Rec would be use of it. I think you can generate a considerable amount of revenue, it's not gonna cover all the costs, but at least to where it's feasible to do something like this. So that means, no, the library does not, they're not gonna come in with 20,000 square feet or something like that. You know, how many rooms do you need, the library, whatever, a smaller version, so that we can get through this without spending a tremendous amount of money, but service it. I think we could use some for storage. If we were able to get everything out of the library that is taking up space, that would be additional space. It might not be that much, but it would be as additional space for the library for now. I have this projection of being an anti-library person. I am not at all. I have a daughter and 2 grandchildren who love going to the library. It's just a matter of when and how much. So I am not against the library. I would love to see a center, it would be a community center with a library. But how do we get there? I have a different view. My concern is the very immediate future. I'd like to not just mothball it. That may be the right thing, but I'd rather see if we can get some of a portion of the library, Park and Rec over there, and use as small areas we have to use to move forward. That's my thought.
So that's short-term, partial
Right.
use of the building.
Right,
So you have to shutter or mothball, however we want to say,
Right.
the other part
Correct.
of it.
correct.
So it's what I was saying before, that's the short-term plan.
Right,
But then we have to look at studying
right,
the long-term plan. And then in these studies, the amounts are smaller also because there's no allowance for Park and Rec in these. It's a library, period. Not a community center, not all those, other things. So, but as Kevin is saying, the planning does take,
right.
a decent amount of time. And
Right.
until you know what you're gonna do, you
Right.
can't know what it's gonna cost.
But that's not.
And
gonna-
you need,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
right, and you need that to be able
Right.
to go to the public, to the residents, to say, this is what you asked for, this is our plan, and they have to, vote on it. So it's what I was saying before, what you're saying is the short-term plan.
Correct.
Absolutely.
And the short-term plan should not interfere with the long-term.
That's
plan.
what I'm
And
saying.
the long-term plan shouldn't
Exactly.
interfere with this.
Right,
So
exactly.
that's why I'm not that concerned. We have a police station that we are gonna have to do things
Mm-hmm.
with. They're going through a 3-phase evaluation. So where's the reserve for that? Why are we, so I'm not pushing off. I'm just trying to focus now on this. That's why I don't think the long-term plan really is that big of a deal in this meeting. We all understand there has to be a plan, and there has to be a design. And I appreciate everything you've done and all the work you've done. But I'm concerned about now. And we may do what we're thinking of doing, and they may come back and say, there's no way. There's just no way. Now, I'm not saying that's gonna happen, but
Yeah.
that way we can at least start to move forward.
I agree with Harry. I'd really like to
Yeah.
see
I mean,
us start
absolutely.
using this building immediately. That's my opinion. If we can do it at a reasonable cost, which I think we can. So I think, as you said, you started to put together a list of things that the library could use
This,
the
the
building
library
for.
staff did this on their own.
It's great.
Yeah,
Does
I
it
think
answer
Parks
your
and Rec should do
questions?
the same thing.
I just
And
got
then
this. We just got this.
So,
just take a quick example. Let's say Parks and Rec wants to turn the gym into pickleball courts. 1, 2, how much would that cost? Right? Is it, then we go to the fire marshal and the building inspector. Listen, we want to put stripes down on the floor, we want to put a net up. Is that allowable under business use? Yes or no? And take it, to Terry's point, incrementally. And then the long-term plan is separate. We do need that long-term plan for the use of the building. Whether it's renovate, whatever we do with it. But I think we do need to look at it.
Kevin, do you know approximately how much square foot what this program that the library put together? Do you have an approximate how many?
No, this was just purely walking through the
Okay.
staff.
There's a blue
and
sky
seeing,
in it.
Here's a blue sky. This is what we
I
can
mean, my
dream.
concern would be how much you really want to use, because again, I think the smaller the better because of the overhead.
So
Well,
you're saying prioritize?
really what we need to
Yeah,
do
prior
is
to-
do the long-term plan and phase it backwards. We need the long-term plan, because although we don't want to be, okay, if we take 10,000 square foot this year, 10,000 in 3-5 years, we don't want to be redoing that 10, reshaping, we want to do
So
it
the
one time.
building's gonna be occupied while we're going through these phases?
Everyone's saying occupies immediately, in small doses.
How is that gonna work?
Well, if we have a
Just
plan.
like anyone remodels their kitchen,
Yeah.
you still live in the rest of the house. You just close this off, do this remodel. That's like any remodeling project. You don't have to, exit the building and close off everything. That's ideally, you don't wanna do that. You wanna plan so you avoid that. What we remodel within the next year, 2 or 3, you don't wanna do again in 5, 10 years. That's why you need the long-term plan and phase it in.
That's a good point.
And Kevin, I'm not talking about remodeling. I'm not talking about having the library come, let me just, I'm not talking about the library coming over and remodeling places. I'm using as is.
Yes.
Same with Park and Rec. You're using as is. Now,
Yes.
if you want to put lines down on the floor, or, the library wants to do something with one of the rooms, it's not, I'm not talking about coming in, redesigning and rebuilding
Right.
10,000 square feet.
Mhm.
I'm talking about using as is, other than if it needs, here or there, minor things.
So can I add to that? Because right
Sure.
now I understand the roof is leaking. Okay, so let's say we need a new roof on half of the building. How much is that?
The roof
How
is
much
leaking in
is
center school?
How much is a new roof for half of the building?
I think
So
several
the
spots.
whole building would be, at 60, Eagle View, 61,280 square foot. It would be 60 squares at $500 per square asphalt. Regular flat roof would be about $1,000 a square, so, and then, there are, the signs of leaks that I saw here would be, it depends on what you get with sheathing. But-
So
that's-
using the building as is, does that mean we need a new roof or we don't need a new roof?
And that's from a Aiello roofing, they actually looked. at this.
Aliens.
Yeah, it wasn't a solid estimate, so it's about
Solid.
$500,000, it's about $500,000.
My question is, again, going back to the hypothetical situation, if we're told by the state, look, you can't move into that building, that new school, until September of next year,
We're
not
gonna
next year, the
continue
year
to use
after,
it.
but we're gonna put a new roof on it, Huckleberry?
That's
Or on-
that's what I've been trying to say.
We're not gonna put a new roof on it, it's not a matter of putting a new roof on.
We know
Yeah.
it's
I'm
leaking
using a
small.
new roof as an example
Right.
because.
What roof are you talking about, Kendall Lake School?
No,
or
no,
this
no,
school?
I'm saying
What
if,
school is
what I'm
that?
saying is, I
Center
don't,
school.
we're talking
Center
about the
school.
roof at Center School.
Okay.
We're not replacing that roof completely. It doesn't matter what we do. If, and what my point is, if Center School, I'm getting hard to, this with the can, whatever. If Huckleberry,
Yes.
if they're saying, look, you can't go until a year from this September, we're still not gonna put a roof on
No.
Center
No,
School.
you're
But
gonna
eventually it's
repair
gonna
it.
need one.
Right.
Right, it's gonna, if you're gonna do, that's for
Okay.
$150,000
Yeah, but to
study.
preserve
So
the
let's say
building,
we
you
need to
start
put a
making
new roof on there, just throwing, let's say next December, we need a roof here. I know half of it has like a semi-new roof, but the other half has other issues, so let's say we need that other half to have a new roof. Let's call it $500,000. And we're gonna use the building as is, but it needs a new roof. And then 5 years from that point, we're gonna start phasing in, because we can then afford to do these renovations. Do we need a new roof again? Or is the roof separate from the other?
Well, ideally, again, like Kevin said, if you
Plan
have
it
the
out.
plan and you work it backwards, if you've had the plan and you have to replace that part of the roof, well, we have the plan, so it would, ideally, I would assume get replaced in a way that it's gonna work with the new building.
The intent, to clarify for Jackie, the intent is that the library, Parks and Rec, Community Center is not gonna expand the building.
Right,
So there will be no roof construction.
right.
So
So
if we have a brand
if-
spanking new roof next year, you can do all the other renovations around the new
That
roof?
is the
Yeah.
intent.
Yep.
I would
That's good
imagine
to
that
know.
there's some kind of entry change maybe to be able to, but that, hopefully that is within the footprint of the building and not expanding out, but
Just don't
that-
wanna throw good money after
Good money
bad.
after
Absolutely
bad.
not,
Yeah,
absolutely
no,
not.
no,
That's why
not
we
at
want
all.
do the full plan of the full building and phase in chunks.
The right side of that roof was changed by Aiello last year.
The right side?
The right side,
Yeah, the new side.
about a quarter of the whole
Of the new section or the old section, which,
for Center School.
yeah,
The
but,
the new.
That's the
The
east
new-
side,
yeah.
that's
The new
newer.
part.
So
Yeah,
I'll
that's
put a new
great,
roof on
great.
it last
It
year.
was changed last year.
Great.
I mean, on any building we have a certain amount of maintenance.
That's-
That includes roofs, includes heating systems, includes oil tanks.
Yeah.
I think, to your point, Kevin, if I understand correctly, if we had the long-term plan, right, and then we back to that, to renovating sections of the building. The first real determination that plan will tell us is, does it make sense to renovate this building, or should we take it down? Right, build new. Right, that's assuming everybody agrees we want a community center library, right?
In my personal opinion, it will be decades.
Wasn't there an
before a
underground
new
tank
building goes up.
Yeah.
If
Because
take
we
this
already
one
have a
down.
building.
It will be decades,
I agree
decades.
with you. I
No one in this room will be here anymore.
I agree
Because
with
we've
you.
already been waiting since early '80s.
Yeah.
It just is not gonna happen.
Well,
It's just throw it, just.
Candlewood Lake
plow it,
Elementary
throw away the
School, we waited 30 years. We
65.4
knew
million.
30 years ago. When my
not gonna
kids,
happen.
when I moved
Yes.
here,
Yes.
we knew that building, Huckleberry, was a mess,
So-
right? That took a long time.
Huckleberry's
There's
a
a maintenance
mess, but
problem.
Center's older and it's not quite as a mess.
No, it's
No, not even close.
Not even
It's a
close.
very simple building. It's just, I'm saying, it's literally the largest ranch house you ever saw. It's a one-story structure, concrete floor, wood studs on the west side, steel frame on the east side with wood stud infill, and roof trusses.
Yeah.
It's simple. It's like your garage.
And actually, the new building,
It's easy to maintain, easy to modify.
is a push towards wood, because wood is also a sustainable.
Sustainable.
So that's the new push. I mean, if they're doing multifamily and high rises with wood.
So we're saying, we think, Kevin, you think, and I tend to agree with you, I think, I'm not an expert on this, that given the construction of the building, renovating it and updating it would be much less expensive than a lot of buildings who are 2 stories that have different construction. You said it's a 1-story ranch.
Yeah.
It's like a
With,
big
you
ranch
said the
house.
other night that there are just beams running through, so all the walls are not supporting walls.
And everything
Are not
built in
structural.
1995, which is about 40% of the floor plan, which is the east
Yeah,
side,
right.
that's a steel frame
Yeah.
with wood infill and wood roof trusses on top.
So
And as
easy
Jackie
to-
said, everything's going back to wood because it's sustainable.
Yeah,
So it's going, you just have to have sprinklers.
yeah.
And you maybe do double layer of sheetrock, you have fire truck access 4 sides. I mean, it's the way that the industry is going.
So we
But
need to look at all the
cheaper-
pluses
sorry,
of the
not for
building.
nothing, but less expensive isn't always better. So,
Oh, that's true.
because I saw Glenn's response back saying,
Well,
okay,
That's true.
you know,
Yeah.
I
Well,
understand.
better in what way?
In what way?
That's what I tried to
mean,
tell you in my email.
Initially, when I walked into this building, I was understanding the library wanted a new library.
In a
and
perfect
the-
world,
the-
yeah.
In a
Yeah.
perfect world, if you gave me a new house, I would take it.
So what I'm getting from
but-
it is because we
Can
have
we
this
afford it?
existing structure, we may as well just go ahead and renovate it instead of looking long-term.
I think what
Starting
your
fresh.
fear is if we're renovating this older existing building, are we gonna have as good of a building as we are later if we put a new one? I mean,
And
if
for
you're clearing the deck and
efficiencies
keeping the
and
frame.
more modern,
And the
up-to-date
roof.
systems.
Let me
I
give
mean,
you an
I just went
example.
through a major
You would be
renovation of my
updating all the
house.
systems, so like I said to you, that would be all, that's all would be brand new. So, it,
If I give you an example, over in Bridgewater is a Bridgewater store, right next door was the Bridgewater Grange.
Yep.
Bridgewater store, my office worked on both buildings. Bridgewater store had a solid foundation, it's a good structure, 1888. It was worthwhile to take that, renovate it, and it's much better than it was, but perfectly salvageable. Nothing was wrong with the bones of it, could work with it, fine. 1888, so that's 60 years older than the oldest part of the school, which is only a small part, is 1938. So that's, and next door was the Grange. Better looking building, you could say, but the foundation had washed out. And most of the structure was already leaning, they already closed off the second floor. So when you look at the structure of that, the bones are not there. It was not safe, the building had to come down, unfortunately. But we have a building that is rock solid. The foundation's fine, stud walls are fine, steel frame is fine, the roof is fine. Why are we gonna demo it? Can't we find a way to piece our way into it
Okay,
in some manner?
so going,
That's the point.
so going back to the urgency of this whole situation is that August is coming soon. And right now in the budget, we have a mothballing cost to carry the building once the kids are out. But now I'm hearing we wanna try to reoccupy it as soon as possible. But there's no plan for that and no cost associated with it. So we as a board need to come up with,
I
are we
think,
giving it to the MBC? Because it is a municipal building and again, their charge is very explicit and it says, kind of, this falls under their purview.
I think before we even do that, we need to understand, short term, to Harry's point, what do you want to use the building for in the next 2 years? Right? And then, I know the Board of Finance looked at this with a long-term plan, and will turn down this time the 150,000, they put 50,000 towards it, right? Their goal, I believe, I haven't
It's not
talked to
turned
them,
down.
is
There's,
to actually
what is it,
do
50
this
50 or 75,000.
big picture
each.
review.
50.
But in the interim, to Harry's point, and it's a very good point, what can we do now on a smaller basis? We're gonna have some of the expenses, a certain amount of expenses to run this building, any way we go.
Yes.
There's gonna be expenses, right? We need to delineate those much more carefully, find out what it costs to run that building right now, what we think it would cost to I don't like the word mothball. Shutter, to basically shut it down.
Shutter is
and-
even,
Yeah.
it's turning everything off.
Oh, that's what I think of as mothballing, because I think of Navy ships that they
Right.
completely,
Right.
but
I think it's
what
the
that,
same.
we need to know what the costs are, right? And much more accurately than we have now. We have 66,000 from the Board of Ed, there was another number for 100,000 to maintain the building. I don't know, but I think the number's somewhere in there. Would it cost more if we allowed incremental use of the building by Parks and Rec and the library? Probably. Is it a reasonable incremental cost, right? Versus the gain that we get, the utility that we get, that the library could use it, right? We just don't have those numbers, and we need to find out what those are. I agree with you, if you're gonna do it properly, you have a full plan and work your way backwards to the list of things that you wanna do, and prioritize them. I think Parks and Rec should do the same thing. I'm sure Parks and Rec, if you gave them $5 million, they could use that entire building and run programs in it all day long, all weekend long for everybody. But we don't have 5 million, right? So incrementally, we should look at that, to Harry's point.
We don't even have 150 apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, you know, if, to my knowledge, there is still 50,000 in this year's budget towards the study. So if we give 50 and 50 next year, 50 the year after, what?
No,
Where-
there is not 50 in the upcoming budget.
Right.
Yeah. What about the police station? When are we gonna start a reserve for the police station? Wait, that is an immediate need. That is, when I say immediate, next 2-3 years, where we need to start to do something with that police station. And again, I don't know, I don't know what the structural, I think the third phase of their evaluation has structural needs, and I don't know what they are, but where do we get the 100,000 for that study, or whatever it costs, whatever it is? That's my concern with moving forward with this study now, at this particular moment, because I think, Steve, you ran on this, I ran on this, we all agree, that is a more immediate need right now.
It's become even more critical with the Police Accountability Act that was passed in the legislature. Now, every single police department has to be, I'm gonna say this wrong, a Class 1 organization. You have different levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And every single police department must work towards becoming Class 1. In April, we're having a review from the state to see if we meet the immediate needs that are allowing us short periods of time to get up to these levels of accountability and reporting and all those things. And included in that is your buildings. And our police building right now does not meet the requirements. And this is law. We no longer have a choice that we can put it off. They're gonna come to us at some point and say, and that affects our insurance, our liability, a lot of different things. We don't know what that is right now, but
And Tara
You
made a
raise a
point
good
to me
point there.
yesterday, that with the new buildings coming into the Four Corners, I think one is gonna have 200 or 300 people, and once you get to another 400 or 500 people coming in town, which is gonna happen in the next few years, that's 1 or 2 more policemen,
Yeah.
with benefits, and so that to me is a more current need as far as reserving money for it. Now, they already have 3 plans, and they have a Band-Aid, a remodeling, and a new build, so they're further along, so, but that has to, to me, that is what needs to be on the front burner right now. That's why I wanted to focus on moving in as much as possible to get you more space, not you, but to get the library more space, get Park and Rec more space, more programs, without high costs, and without going into the study to start building backwards. I'm not talking about starting backwards right now or even real soon. Because to me, we have to tackle the police station first, but we want to get more room for the library, not 30,000 square feet, but, to where it's manageable, and get the park and rec in there.
And that's why I think it's important, please, that everybody really scrutinize these questions and these numbers here, because if we start talking, new programs and everything, how many employees does that require? Our personnel, our human capital is already spread quite thin, and the chair of the Board of Finance made it pretty obvious that they're suggesting the capital, that there's too much overhead as it is. So creating more programs, and sometimes we maybe need to scale back what we're doing in order to move forward. And right now, it's like we're busting at the seams across the board. I'm hearing this, that, and the other thing all the time, and sometimes you need to reevaluate how you're doing business in order to make progress.
I understand that, but the intent from both the library and Parks and Rec is not to expand staff or programs or anything like that. The staff probably will have to expand just because you're now occupying a larger square footage, so just to man that or just to staff that personnel. You may need more people, I don't know, but the real intent is that the library is in a building that is on average, according to standards, is 1/3 the size it should be, and Parks and Rec has no space, indoor space that they own and occupy on their own. So the intent is not to grow, to fill some kind of space. The intent is really to finally catch up what has been needed for 40 plus years in this town. So it's not, these are very valid questions, I understand that. And I will pass these along to our chairpersons who unfortunately couldn't be here at this meeting. But the intent is not to force our way, to expand, to do this. The intent is just to fill what we need now.
And my thanks to
Both
Ralph for
departments.
helping me get here, because again, we rely on these people to maintain, and they do a fantastic job, all of our municipal buildings. We are in a very unique situation here. From what I understand, the town of Brookfield has never inherited a space aside from the rental properties that our tenants live in. So this is new for everybody. And I really do believe that we have to continue to have these kinds of meetings, so we're all singing the same song. Again, I've been bombarded by all kinds of input.
Yeah, well, we need numbers first.
So, Harry, I
We
have
need
a
some kind of
question. You were saying, and agreed that the police station, we don't have a choice. So you said that they have 3 levels of plans that are already done. So I guess my question is, how long ago was that planning done?
Was that
The last one was done 2 years ago for a all-new building over here where the farmers market.
Okay, so it's 2 years plus,
Yeah.
right? So I think what the Park and Rec and the library is looking for, other than, like you said, no big expense
Yeah.
using the space short term, is just to actually get a plan done, and that probably not even happen for 7 years down the road.
How about raising the money and getting it?
But, right, but
We raise the money and get it. The town doesn't have that money to do that now. We have to address, as far as I'm
Yeah.
concerned, we have to address the police station for, now, they have
No, I
three-
agree.
They have 3 other plans, and this is why I think they're further along, because they have a plan. When did they bring those?
The first plan came out about 6 years ago.
It was about
The
5 or
second
6
one
years
about
ago.
4 or 5
And it's
years
a
ago.
rebuild. What it is, it's a renovation / addition.
To the existing.
And then another one was a new build. I don't think that we're in the position of a new build. I think that they can key on that.
No.
So what they need to do is get that. Now, that's
I
6
think,
years.
I think they're gonna have to redo it because of the new requirements
Right,
under
right.
the new law.
Right.
They're
But at
gonna
least
have
it's
to
a,
replan the
at
whole
least
thing.
it's a starting place where.
But they've been lucky,
We're
and
here to talk
it's
about
easy to do because they
Center
use
School.
the outside service.
But
We're
that's
here
why,
to talk about Center School.
Right, so I guess what
I-
my point is, Tara, that it takes an X amount of time, years, whatever, to have the money and to get it planned.
I understand that.
So that's,
Yeah,
if
I
we're
know,
looking
I
at it
know.
7 years down the road
I know.
at 2030,
And the Board of Finance has already even alluded to the fact that we could potentially run them simultaneously. So, look, I get it, like, I think the backwards planning is the best way
Yeah.
forward. That's gonna be very important.
Mhm.
I would ask that Laura, only because, she's new, she has a great perspective and different ideas, and coming from New Milford, where they recently went through a similar situation with Pettibone, that was left to Parks and Rec Department, right, Laura? If you couldn't,
Yeah, so John Petty One Community Center is split between the Social Services Department, Youth Agency, and Parks and Recreation Department. I think it would be a very good resource to talk to the town of New Milford because the expenses that they've encumbered in keeping this facility open. My experience with it was every day we'd have funnels hanging from the ceiling and garbage pails sticking down. It was embarrassing. It wasn't safe because we ended up losing a lot of IT equipment in the server room. There was a lot that was going on. There were 2 boilers, one kept failing, the room was freezing. Our yoga classes we'd had to cancel because it was cold.
But again, that building went for 5-6 years
Right.
unoccupied
Unoccupied, that's
and
the
nothing
problem.
done to it.
Yeah.
Correct.
So it did deteriorate over time.
My only reservation on this is that we do this the right way prior to moving in, like you're saying in subsections, like, is it okay to move in right now? If we do move in and we start using storage or utilizing rooms, and when we're doing these piecemeal renovations, if you will, where do we go in the meanwhile? So these are all our things that we do have to consider. Yeah, we would love to have extra space. Who wouldn't, right? Sure, we could utilize like the areas, but I just want to make sure that before we go into something like that, that it is suitable and it's not a safety hazard or really like it didn't look professional at all. There's stains all over the walls because the water's just dripping through. They just had to do a roof replacement in a section over there because they couldn't replace the whole thing. So there's a whole entire section in that facility that's completely abandoned and it smells horrible and no one will move in there. So
That's
they don't
definitely
even know
the
what
wrong
they're
way to
doing
do
with that facility. And they're still stuck with the whole, all right, we've just spent this much money and it's this bad. Are we going to get rid of it or, just tear it,
But
purpose it completely? So
the
it's
point is they let it get that bad to
That
start
sounds
with.
like poor
Well, I-
planning.
Poor
From what I
planning.
understand, from what I
Manage the
understand,
plan,
in speaking to other people, we haven't invested in the maintenance and upkeep in this building that we should have.
Right.
In
So,
any of
well, this is gonna be a problem, because now we're into mechanical systems, and not an engineer, but if you let a mechanical system sit idle for a certain amount of time, you introduce new problems. So now you have
No,
to
you're
create
right.
zones and everything else.
You're
So,
right.
I'm just saying, we owe it to do our due diligence to look at what we have upcoming, lessons learned from New Milford, and look at what we have right now, and analyze
Agreed,
what needs to be done.
agreed. And that would be part of,
Because even moving people into a certain part is gonna involve maintaining the rest of the school.
yes.
You're into alarms, you're into sprinkler systems, now you're into 5, 15, 20-year maintenance of these systems, some of which I'm sure hasn't been done.
this conditions review with all these photos, I keep going back to it. So there is some value in here, I suppose. But, what does all this mean? Does this mean we have to do all of this? I just was looking at the paint on the outside. In order for us to have a nice facility, to occupy it in August or September, let's call it, are we gonna paint it so it looks nice aesthetically? I've had several parents write and say, why can't we just paint the school? They go every day to drop their kids off and see this school that hasn't been painted.
You're probably looking at $100,000 to paint.
$100,000 just to paint it?
For wood
So, are we gonna
replacement,
leave it like
preparation
that?
paint.
Are we gonna
It's
leave
more-
it with the paint chipping away?
It's more important to paint it to preserve it more than aesthetically. I mean, if you
Should
don't
have the
paint
kids
it, the
do it
wood's
as a
gonna
final
continue.
touch.
I looked the other night, the wood is dried out, it's checked where, there is, I was able to push through, there is some rotting wood.
So it's one thing to say, okay, cool, let's go in and use it as it is, but it's
Nobody's
not
saying
that
that,
simple.
Tara. Nobody's saying go in.
$100,000 to paint it.
Oh, no, we're aware, that's what I'm saying, a brand new building is $400 a square foot. This is not a brand new building, it's only worth 100, because there's all this work that needs to be done to fill that gap. But I think it can be done. To just I want to stop the idea of bulldozing it. That's just plowing away $5.4 million for no reason at all. No reason. So we can start with what we have, make a plan to get it back to its full value, and take it in chunks. And there are some items, like full exterior maintenance, have to be done, no matter if it's fully occupied or not. The roof cannot leak. The roof needs to be fully fixed. The
There
exterior
isn't
needs to be
designated
fully repaired,
cooling.
so that if it needs rot taken out and painted, then we do the full exterior. But we don't necessarily need to, we can shut down the heat in the back third of the building if that's not occupied now, or minimize the heat. I mean, but just you take it, full plan, take it in phases.
You won't be able to shut any heat down that because of the issues with the attic and the sprinklers.
Right.
Your sprinklers are gonna fail, so.
And the sprinklers, I
It's a
think
wet
in the
system.
report already said they needed to be replaced.
But then that's something that has to be looked at and brought into the plan. But again, that's not a reason you bulldoze the building because you gotta heat the full thing.
I'm just saying you have to
Well,
look at
there's
it.
no
Okay, so
funding
that's,
for the
then
oil for
fine,
next
we'll
winter
note
right
that
now,
and
so.
that's part of the plan then. Thank you. I mean, that's what, the plan is approachable. Make a plan and let's do it in chunks.
Well, again, there's no, in the 80,000, I think, where the Board of Finance left it, I don't know, it could have been
That's
reduced,
not nearly that.
for the carrying
Mhm.
costs. I don't think fuel was
not-
associated, so now we're gonna have to
That's not nearly. And
fill the
Kevin,
tank
I'm
to
not
keep it
saying
heated
there's-
next winter?
I'm not saying your idea is not reasonable or possible, it's just my assumptions were based on the fact that we were not getting money to run the building, or to operate the building, or make improvements for that matter. It really, what they funded was the utility costs, just to keep the building operational, but they didn't fund any improvements. For example,
It's clear,
Jason
Ralph,
just
that we're
reminded me
not
of,
all on the same page, we're not
Right.
all fully informed.
Right.
That's unfortunate.
like for
And even,
example, oil tank.
this probably should have been the smaller meeting to start
Correct,
with
yeah.
and get us professionals all on the same page.
Yeah.
And then, and go through the reports and walk through the building in a more detailed fashion. That's probably where we should be
Well, I thought that's what
today.
the other walk was going to be. Me and Harry were talking about, we were under the impression it was gonna be more of an involved walk
Yeah.
about the condition of the building more than the spaces that
It
were
was,
gonna be
it was
used.
purely to
Correct.
refamiliarize the two departments with the building, because due to COVID restrictions, we haven't been in the building in
Because
3
everybody
years.
has pieces of information, for example, the
Yes.
oil tank is,
Yes.
coming to the end
Yes.
of its useful life. That's gonna have to be replaced, right, pretty much right away. The windows, if
If
somebody
we
moves into a
replace that,
similar
that's,
space,
that's
the
gonna be a
windows
huge, I mean, potentially, a huge expense for remediation and
Correct.
abatement.
If they should happen to find that the tank was leaking, that could be a hidden expense, but. the
But you know, you
windows-
have that expense whether you demo the
No, I
building or
agree
whether
with
you
you.
carry forward. You still
Agreed.
gotta take care of that and still remediate that, so
My
the
analysis
town
was-
owns that expense no
My
matter
analysis was
what.
strictly dollars and cents. It was based on what was be the most prudent way to move forward, based on the fact that we don't have money to spend on the building. Now, if we don't have money,
That's-
right.
That's the note, that's
Correct.
the note.
Your assumption was based on the fact that
Yes.
we could find a way to fund the project.
Let's be positive and
My-
find a way, yes, I
Right.
agree.
My analysis was done based on the fact the Board of Finance told me money's not available to spend. So my analysis was based on that, and the most prudent way to move forward on a dollars and cents basis, if money is not available to spend, is to knock the building down, because like you said, your $5.4 million investment is going to deteriorate if it's not going to be used. And the only way to use that investment is to invest money into it now. And if there's no money to invest into it now, that $5.4 million in 5 years is gonna be worth $2.4 million. It's just gonna
But
deteriorate
even if
over
that's
time.
true, Ralph,
Yeah.
you're still 2.4 million ahead of the game. That's what I'm trying to
But then
say.
you end up with a New Milford situation.
No, that
No.
sounds
Well,
like
that's
there's
a
other
whole
situations
other-
going on there.
If
First
you
of all,
look
that's a
into
totally
Milford-
flat roof building built like in the 50s.
Yeah.
So that's
It's not the
different.
same.
This 40% of the building's built in 1995, much better construction
better.
than.
With
than
that portion
Craven
of the
School.
building, I agree with you.
Actually,
Kevin.
1930s construction
The
was
part
very
Is
good.
also.
The
is
part of
better.
the building that
70s or
worries me is the
80s, I
wood
think, get
frame
rid of it.
portion, because we just did a window project over at the library, which is, I think the library is 1975 or so.
Mhm.
And when we took those windows out because they were leaking, there was an enormous amount of rotten wood in there. And you have a similar situation over at Center School. The windows are at the end of the useful life. I don't know what type of water infiltration you're getting, but if there's any water infiltration over the last 80 years or so, then you're gonna find rotten wood behind the walls.
Mhm.
The insulation is probably not up to code. All the insulation is gonna have to replace, so you're gonna have to take all the sheetrock down inside. So basically, you're gonna be ripping the building down to its studs.
Well, was the assumption by the center school we used to have
And
hot
then once
committee.
you, right.
But that's not exactly true. So
Okay.
I'll let that go at that. But
Yeah.
that was the recommendation from the
Mhm.
center school, is just bring it back to the studs, so we see everything.
Yes, I think it's necessary.
Budget-wise, I don't think we can do that. So
What I
you
think-
do as much as you can, and if the insulation is below today's current standards, if it's allowed by code,
Mhm.
then that's a decision that has to be made.
Well, the part of the problem I have is what you're saying is that if you don't examine all the wood frame portion of the building, then you don't know what's there. And the building is,
Not true. That's it.
How are you gonna identify rotten wood? if
It's
you
what I do every day.
Mhm.
It's
Well,
what I
how-
do
how do
every
Me
day.
too.
You don't need to see the piece of wood to know whether there's rot in it or not.
Well, how would you identify it? We didn't know there was rot in the wood at the library until we took the windows down and we examined, the structure of the building.
Well, there's,
Well, I was involved in the window, the project over there, so I can't really speak to that. But you start with where you see problems, and then you radiate out from there. So,
Well, window,
as Sheldon said, there is some siding rot over there, but it's not the full building, so you start with those,
But-
and you go.
if you don't invest
So-
$100,000 today, that building will continue to deteriorate though. So immediately, the first thing I would do if I had the money to do something would be paint the building and make sure there's no water infiltration. So I would concentrate on the roof and painting of the building to stop the rot and to stop water infiltration. The next thing would be look at the windows, because that's another area where you could get water infiltration and you make the building tight. So a window replacement project, I could just tell you over at the library was about $500,000 to replace the window. That building is at least 3 or 4 times larger than the library, so I would imagine the windows are gonna cost in the $1 million range. So, what those are the
But there are
things.
two-story windows at the library, these are much smaller
but that-
windows.
that was-
So it's a
No,
different-
you
we're
mitigate
We're
that
talking about these
stuff.
specific
Right.
details. I
Correct.
think we need to get back to Harry's
Right.
point.
Well, I'm just.
Well,
I'm
Every
saying,
building, I know New Milford because I talked to the mayor up there. When they shut down Pettibone, they made a mistake. They just shut it down. They didn't do any planning for it. The building began to fall apart. They are now put it over to Parks and Rec, and they have exactly the problems that Laura described because they didn't maintain the building whatsoever.
You have to do some mitigation,
I
Ralph.
think you're taking my comments as a negative, and they're not meant
No.
to be a
No.
negative. They're
They are,
just.
Ralph. They are.
Well, it's
No, I'm
facts.
telling you, well.
They're not facts, that's why I'm
No.
disputing him.
No.
I'm a structural engineer in
So the
buildings
building
all
does
day,
not
every
need
day.
new
There's
windows?
So I'm used to
Kevin,
looking
there's
at
one-
where there's damage and where there's
Kevin,
not.
Kevin, there's one thing that I
I'm
said.
not debating your
that's not-
pedigree, I'm asking, does the building need new windows?
There's one thing that I said that is not a fact in your mind, and that's whether you could identify
We
rotten wood
wouldn't do
behind a
that
wall.
until
Are
we
you
had a
denying
plan.
that there's
Because-
roof leaks in the
You
roof?
know,
I haven't seen it,
Okay,
I
do
don't
some
know.
repair.
Well, I was.
I know it was inspected by Watsky, which is
So
a
where do we get
top,
the money to
top
take it down?
roofing
It's $1 million.
consultant.
Okay.
And
No,
Tech
we're gonna
was
shutter it
inspected
until we
5
can
years
afford
ago.
to take it down.
Are you
Well,
gonna-
say
are you-
Guys, everybody, I think we're getting far
Well, I know,
afield
because
here.
I'm being
We
called
need
a
to
liar.
decide here what we
I'm
want
not
to do,
calling you a
short
liar.
term,
You are.
and then move forward. I think the short-term goal here is to see if we can use the building as soon as the school's vacated, what we would use the building for, and what that would cost. And then we have to say, okay, will these guys approve it, right? And I think we go item by item, whatever Laura wants for Parks and Rec, whatever the
Well, it's not-
library wants, right? And do it, as Harry said, piecemeal. Let's look at this. We're gonna have certain expenses with this building no matter what. Any way we go, we need to delineate exactly what those are. I'm not comfortable with the numbers we have right now. How much will it cost to heat? How much would a security system cost? All the lighting, obviously that's gonna change some, it'll probably go down. But here's our worst case scenario right today as the school building is being used. How much does all that cost, right?
Steve, to me, I think we need parameters to give these people.
I
I
agree.
mean, we can't just say whatever you want. I mean, we need to go to Park Rec and say, look, here's a certain amount of space that you're gonna be able to use. Go to the library and say, here's a certain amount of space you're gonna use. And it'll cut your work down, but so you're not saying, we're gonna plan to do this much when that's not even feasible,
We're
So-
talking about they, who's they? That's the last question, who's gonna manage all of this? That's why the only solution in my mind is MBC. That's why they exist, is to do this type of thing.
Have you talked to them? Are they willing to take that on?
I did talk to Paul.
Tara, are you talking about having them oversee the interim plan to just go in and use?
Having a
Some of
body
the space.
who's not the library, who's not Parks and Rec, who's not the former ad hoc committee, who's
Right.
not Tecton, who's not doing the Kaufman.
Right.
We need our government
Right.
system to work for us. We need to give them a charge, be it look at all 3 options, or look at how we can get people in there immediately in September, and we need that information by June so we can forward plan.
Yep.
And, oh, by the way, they won't have a desk to sit on, so where is that furniture gonna come from? So,
I
there's a
think they
lot
have-
involved.
They have significant expertise on the NBC, and they could do a lot of this. I would suggest that we do it with the input of all of the
And that's fair, maybe
organization.
they wanna have a subcommittee and bring all different
I think it's
facets
important to bring the
together.
users in too.
I
They
would
can't
agree.
work in a vacuum.
No.
They
No,
need
no.
that input.
Yeah, they
Definitely.
need to analyze everything that we have
So
before
we should
us now.
Take that up at our
The
Board of
stakeholders.
Selectmen
That's
meeting
why I
on Monday.
wanted to do this and on Monday do that, but we need to have a way forward that everybody agrees on here. I think the three of us, and please, I'm speaking for you, we would love to see this be a library community center. I don't think there's any ands, ifs, or buts about it.
And I would too. So anybody who thinks I'm
Okay,
being
the four of
negative,
us.
I'm not. I'm just giving you facts.
But financially, we need to know the house, you know. They,
You're
so
right.
at
We
some
can't make
point,
these
somebody's gonna
decisions
come to this
without
board, be
understanding
it
what
the
it's gonna
three of us
cost.
or anyone else who's gonna do this in the future, and say, we need this appropriation, can we move forward and do great things and do whatever it is we wanna do? Well, right now, the Board of Finance is kinda saying, not feasible.
Yeah, but
So,
they're already putting money into it. They're
Yeah,
putting
they're
$50,000 into it, so it's not
so-
that they're saying it's not feasible.
No.
If it's not
What do we
feasible,
do
then
with
don't put
$50,000?
$50,000
Right.
into it.
They're gonna want
saying
a lot more
They're planning
information.
for the future of this,
before they
is this
vote.
happening. And I'm not disagreeing with that, I'm just saying, it's not time to put that
well,
money
the
in right now.
when, it becomes the when, and that's where the backwards planning comes in.
Well, the 50, the original request was 150, but that's for the architect to do the plan.
Which
And
you need
it's
to
not-
go here, right?
No,
No?
that's eventual, once we do go for a
Right.
building permit, then we probably would involve these gentlemen as consultants to double check that we're on the right path, that the architects are on the right path, that's very common, but it doesn't go full to them until the drawings are ready.
We can ask the municipal building committee to do it. Paul Checo, Just Flowers, and Jack Naren. Actually, it was me who recruited them before. When they first had a project in Brookfield, I told them, you are young architects, you live in Brookfield, why don't you be why don't you volunteer?
Yeah, we
Municipal
got a
building
lot of
committee.
skill sets
Yes,
on
they
the
did.
MBC. A lot of skill sets.
So that's something I think that we need to look at for Monday. Again, this topic is on the agenda, and
And give them a charge of what we want them to do.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's where we go. And I would ask that the Parks and Rec and Library continue your list, send that list, let's
So-
clarify what programs you want to run there. And that will be the
That was my
skeleton of what the MBC looks at, right?
So
We have to have some idea of what we want to use the building for, more than we just want to use the building.
Parks and Rec is saying they have it. I'm assuming you're almost there. You,
I'm
Well-
sorry, can I insist that the Parks and Recreation Commission and the Library Board be involved in all of these discussions?
yes, I
Because
think,
it's not just, the building is very important, whether it's
Maybe
up,
we put a
down, or
rep
in
from
between.
each
I
on
think the
the.
Well, they're the-
subcommittee
you're the
should
stakeholders.
consist of
Yes,
every-
You're the
absolutely.
stakeholder, so
I-
you should be.
I
Yeah,
think that
absolutely.
is 100% necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. The MBC, we want that. We're not gonna get a good result here if we don't have input from the end users.
Right.
Yeah, okay, that's what I suggest we do. I'm good with that.
I'm a little bit hesitant here because you're gonna be asking a volunteer group of people who are, I know them, so they're talented people, smart people, but you're asking them to do work that you normally pay a consultant to do, and I don't know if that's
Well,
appropriate, if that's.
Let's
they-
see
they
what,
can-
let's see
they
what
can
the
provide advice.
MBC, if they're willing to take this on.
Did
Much like we form an ad hoc committee.
They took on the new school, right?
Yeah.
That
And-
is in their charge right
and
here.
they're
It
starting-
says what
they're
supposed
starting
What
to
does
do.
it say, I'm sorry?
Yeah.
They didn't design the new school, though.
The Board of Selectmen, upon determination, can assign the MBC or not assign the MBC to a project.
We're not
It's up to
looking
the
at
Board of Selectmen.
designing at this point.
Yeah,
I'm
what
talking
are
about
we
we're
designing?
talking about the MBC
We're
coming
trying to
in
get-
and saying, we want to repurpose a small section of this school so that we can use part of it for library, part for Park and Rec.
Are
They're
we
not
not
re-
gonna start with a full plan and scale back?
No,
Then what if
Well,
you
they're not
5 years
gonna
from
do
now
that.
say we have to renovate that because we made a mistake and gave you the
we're not
guys.
doing renovations now. We're not doing renovations now.
In
we
5
are-
years, 10 years, when, whatever the renovations are, whether it's simply removing a wall. We took the wall down, and then 5 years from now, we say, no, that should have been the kid space, that wall should have been there.
We're not taking any walls down. We're not.
I'm trying to give you some example that we can talk about here, Harry. So give me a little
Well,
bit
yeah,
of breathing
I'm sorry,
space
go
here.
ahead, go ahead.
Is you need an overall plan,
Mhm.
as we keep saying, and then we're gonna attack it in chunks.
Mhm.
I thought that, to phase it in.
Right.
I think that's separate
Occupy
from
in
this
phases.
charge of the MBC. The charge of the MBC right now is to use it in its current state to the best of our ability.
That's
There
what
are
I'm
gonna
saying.
be things that will be needed to be done,
And we
like.
can't
I'm
use it
saying,
in its
the
current
current
state.
state
What
is
would it
phase
take
one.
Right,
incrementally
exactly. These
to
phase
get
one.
there? to
That's
use-
phase one of an overall plan.
Right.
The overall plan, but we're gonna
You
go
gotta
in
do
and-
that on the side, whoever that is, that whatever you need your 150 for.
Now
that
you
has
got
to
two
be-
different people designing a plan
No,
for
I-
the same
Go ahead,
building.
Kevin, what you, finish your thought, what you were gonna say there.
I think we take the 50,000, if that's what we have, then we go with that. If that can be increased, it's more reasonable to hire a professional, but anyway, you hire the professional, do the overall plan, and part of that charge to that professional is to give it to us in a manner that it can be phased in, so that we take this 5,000 square feet in 2 years, and this is what we occupy, and then this phase
So
two, phase three.
between
So-
September and 2 years from now, what happens to the building? We leave the heat on low?
I'm just saying 2 years. It would be great if it's 6 months, 4 months, it would be great. I don't know.
I see your point, but
You're
by
talking
the
about
time
two
we went
different
through,
things.
hired somebody, went through vetting, we're talking August, they wouldn't get a report till next January or February at the earliest. What we're looking for is, to Tara's point, is to simply, what do we need to do right now to possibly get the library in? Get Parks and Rec using it.
Well, so, I don't wanna get
And if
into
the
too much
NBC
into
is
the
willing
weeds,
to
but
take that on,
if we
to at
occupy,
least dimension it for us, I think that's a good thing.
if they're willing to, God bless
Let's
them,
just have
thank
to
you,
ask.
thank you, let them know.
Otherwise, the only person, because again, as a reminder, this is now going to be a municipal building. It's sitting in our lap.
Yeah.
That means it's up to these two here with the assistance of these fine professionals.
Mhm.
Period. So short of us having the MBC intervene and kind of help us out, I'm looking to these guys.
So here's one detail that's gonna have to be done, and I don't know if it's the responsibility or the liability that the NBC volunteers would wanna take on. If they do, I'll take it, fine. But there's gonna have to be a separation between spaces of the occupied spaces now and the unoccupied. Who designs that separation? Does it have to be fire resistant, a fire barrier, fire wall?
God bless you.
Does it have to have egress? So there's gonna be many levels, someone's gotta design that and take responsibility for it and liability. Does the town want that liability? Or is that, you know what I mean? So that's just one, for instance, of something that a decision has to be made on how that separation is done. So
Well, that's something I think
it's
we can ask
it's
the
a little
NBC
bit.
to do. We can ask the NBC to look at that.
Yeah.
The
more
charge
that's
of the
the better.
NBC will be to go in and say, this is what we want to use. Our charge is, here's what we want to do. Tell us if, does it have to be fire code? Does it have to,
Right.
if we're gonna close up? Give us our options there. It has nothing to do with rebuilding anything. It has nothing to do with taking walls down. It has nothing to do with the $50,000 plan. They're gonna say, in order for you to move in when the school is vacant and without renovating, here's what you can do. Now, if you're gonna close off part of the school, then you gotta do this, and this. And then the town can weigh in. They can weigh in.
Right.
It has nothing to do with moving forward. This here has nothing to do with moving forward. Nothing.
I agree.
And I agree with you that 3 or 4 years or whatever, 2 years, 3 years down the road, yes, let's start putting money aside for this design. But I don't think we're ready for that. We have the police that we have to deal with, and every $50,000 we put into this progress is $50,000 we're not putting into the police. And I think that they're a more immediate need. That's not saying I don't want the study.
I hope the town is not that broke,
Well,
that we can't
Did
really.
you watch the budget outlook?
I did, but we're really that broke.
We have the 4th highest debt in the state. In fact, tomorrow night at the town meeting and the Board of Finance public hearing, they start at 7 and 7:30 respectively. I would encourage everybody to come
yeah.
to hear. It's, yes, we are not
yeah,
sitting
we are the
in a
3rd or
nice
4th,
spot.
correct me if I'm wrong, 3rd or 4th highest debt per capita in the state, in the entire state. 167
You know,
cities and towns, 165.
that happens to every town that builds a new school up. They
Well,
pop into the top
But
10.
we were there
It's
before
like
the school.
Yeah.
We were in this condition. If I'm wrong, I apologize, but up to my knowledge, we were here before the school was built.
No, not in the top,
No?
no.
We had a lot of
My
debt,
apologies.
old debt, and then
Yeah.
the new school came and.
There was
Put us in the
there
bubble.
was a lot of
3
debt,
years.
and we
So that would.
Stop.
I'll
taking
send you
on
the
debt.
link to the budget outlook. you can lay in bed tonight and watch it. It's in about 40 minutes, but it's really, and then there's, Ryan created a model where you can insert like capital projects over time and see what that does. A lot of it has to do with the percent of the debt that towns are allowed by certain law to carry, and we're right there at that threshold. And anytime you start to insert a new capital investment, it puts us right over, and it's not healthy. And then
No,
we're gonna lose
there
our
are
bond rating.
There are 3 different levels of debt you can take on as a town. The town could, it's in our annual report, take up to about $350 million in debt legally. We're nowhere near that number. What you can take on for schools, for buildings, it all varies. There's 3 different levels. We're now at about 110 million, so we're nowhere near the total amount allowed by law, but no one in their right mind would go up to 350 million on an $80 million budget. You just wouldn't do it. Your debt payment would be $25 million a year.
And
On
one of
an
the
$80
other
million
issues,
budget,
yeah,
that's crazy.
one of the other issues that we have, and Grant, correct me if I'm wrong, next year's budget, I mean, everything, most everything that we're gonna be paying for is gonna be more expensive, whether it's fuel, electric, services. Contractual.
Yeah.
The year after that, it's gonna be that much more, and the year after that, it's gonna be that much more, so.
It happens every year.
It's, you know, and again, I'm not for not
Your house
doing
it
this, I just think that there is, you know, again, you had 3 selectmen, 2 first selectmen, 1 selectman who agreed, you know, we ran on it, the town, you know, supported, and I think that the police have to be in the forefront. And that's my big bugaboo, really, is what do we do? How do we put the money in the reserve to get that going? And I don't think it would be a long-term thing, because again, I think that they are further ahead of the curve, because they already at least have a base plan. So I don't think I'm talking, well, we gotta wait 5 more years. It's just not that, we need a year or 2 before we can start to invent it. I agree with you moving backward, and I agree with you having a plan. It's just a matter of, you know, we just can't, to my knowledge, I've been wrong, I was wrong once this summer, 67. But if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I would apologize, but I don't think I am. And we just need a little more space to get that project going. And if I'm wrong, you know, then I am, and I apologize, but I don't think I am.
No, I thought you were just saying the 50,000 was not doable. I thought the 50,000 was in the budget.
It is.
That's what I'm saying.
No,
It-
50,000
it's
is in
proposed.
this proposed budget
Proposed
for
budget. It's in the
23,
proposed.
24,
Approved, yeah,
right?
Yeah, and I'm not, and I'm,
And I support police, my brother and brother-in-law
I-
are both retired
I
police
understand,
officers.
and believe
Were
me, I
retired
support
police officers.
both of these programs. I would love to have these.
I think Glenn alluded to, we can run them simultaneously if we do it right, and that's where the math is gonna come in, you know, how, it's the how.
Yeah, we're looking at this in Ryan's spreadsheet, which was very helpful. You know, we're talking the worst-case scenarios, the lowest growth in the grand list, the highest cost in employee insurance, right? We're looking at the worst-case scenarios right now, and it's good to look that way. But as you move forward and you get actual numbers, right? So when we went for the school, we anticipated it would be a 4.5% interest rate we would pay. We ended up paying 2.62, which is gonna save $30 million over the life of that borrowing. We couldn't anticipate that, but what we brought to the town was a 4.5%. This is what it's gonna cost at 4.5%. So we were well below, but it's best to look at the worst case scenarios, and that's what Ryan's model does, and I think that's the right thing. But as things get better, if the grand list grows, if we have additional development that we weren't aware of, those things will help. If salaries don't go up as much as we think they will, that will help. All of those things will.
Well, it's also a very
And give you
different
more room.
time. It's also a much different time. You got lucky with that low rate. I mean, we could, if we were able to go out to bond for this project now, we're looking at 7-8%. It's a different climate, okay?
And it makes it much more difficult.
These are all really actually like good problems to have, in my humble opinion, because, you know, we could be in third world countries not even able to talk about these kinds of things. So these are good problems to have, and I think that if we all just continue to put our heads together and work through it and figure it out, we can get there. I just don't know where there is.
So I think we should look at it in a positive way, that that's the end goal, right? And
Absolutely.
work from there. instead of the negative of, you know, how are we gonna, you know, I think we should say that is our end goal, so how do we start to get there?
It's always been the end
It's
goal, and
always
just
been.
so it's clear to everybody, to the public, hi, whoever wants to watch this long, boring meeting, but, you know, in my mind, if it were to demo, I see a new building, and I've even spoken to a couple people, build a replica, a new, state-of-the-art, energy-efficient replica.
We can make it energy efficient if we're stripping it. No, seriously, I mean,
It's actually more
Okay, and
sustainable.
that's
too.
More sustainable.
That's where the
More
experts
energy
come
a
in.
efficient.
more
It's
energy
sustainable.
efficient and
That's-
sustainable thing
that's-
to do is
The
not
code
to
is
take.
written that way now.
If,
It's to
yeah,
help
all
you
the-
save buildings.
Right, that, I mean, that is across every type of building, every organization, every big, huge builders all over the country. The big thing pushed now is to use our existing building stock.
Okay.
Because
And
it's the
before
most
the,
sustainable thing to do.
Before anybody can move into a center school, they need to apply for a building permit and submit the plans.
Right, right.
And
Not
we're
gonna
going to
happen.
review it.
Not gonna happen. Okay, are we finished here?
So just for the three of us moving forward for Monday, are we gonna establish, are we gonna be ready for a charge on Monday?
Well, you'd have to put one together.
How about if we address it Monday? And tell Paul if you want, is Paul the chairman?
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, maybe get Paul to come talk to us.
We could have Paul come and we could say, here's what we're thinking. We want to put a plan together, we'd like to have you oversee it.
Right.
It is not, you're not designing a new school, you're not putting plans for a new school. We want to use a certain part of the school so that we can give some relief to the library and the board and the park and rec. And kind of work with them to get a game plan. And you know, I don't think we need to charge, I think it would be, I could be wrong, but I don't know if we want to charge them with something. Let's figure out what we want to charge them with and work with Paul Monday at the meeting, you know, and just talk about it.
It seems like you're looking to analyze the space. And can we
Yeah.
move the library and.
I mean, and we could write a charge, or you could write a charge to them, and I guess, I would just think they would want to have some input into it. I don't know, whatever.
Kevin thinks we're maybe overanalyzing this or overdoing it or what, I see you kind
I
of,
agree.
but then Frank also had something to say.
It's
I have a
good.
question.
Yes.
This is for Ralph.
Yeah.
A while ago, a long time ago, in the meeting, you mentioned hazardous materials.
Yeah.
If it's a change of use, would that potentially trigger a mandatory remediation?
It's a question that they, Demi and Jason can answer.
Depends what work we're doing.
Depends what the material is, where it's located.
We
Right
can't-
now, it's a school,
Can't,
so.
can't just answer that off the blue, not being sarcastic, just like we, you know, we
Right.
can't answer what,
It's very
what
specific
you
to the
need, because
location.
you know,
Situation.
levels of work determine
If you
levels
demo
of
the,
abatement and,
Yeah,
if you demo the building,
Certain
you do have
requirements.
to handle
Right.
it,
Yes.
right now, during the demo. If it, depending on what it is, where your work is, where the material is, lead paint can be covered over. So there's, depends what it is. As I understand it, all the floor tiles have been replaced in the building, so the
Right, yeah.
asbestos tiles are already
They're
gone.
gone.
Well,
There
like
may be-
asbestos can be left alone if you're not
If it's not
doing
viable,
anything to it.
yes.
The
As
minute
long as
you
you
Floor
don't
tiles have
disturb
been all
it.
replaced.
Then
As
you're
long
not
as you
in a situation.
don't disturb
That's right.
Correct. If it doesn't-
material.
yes.
Yeah.
So, and as a school, it's inspected once a year at least, so for hazardous material, so where the staff and the children are, there should not be anything.
Isn't
The
that
bigger
vinyl
problem there
tile
is the attic
replaced?
space.
It's all replaced.
So,
Yeah, but
there's
3 years
gonna be no
ago-
finished space up there.
3 years ago, when we went on the tour, 3 summers ago, Dan Caldwell, they gave us the tour.
yes.
He mentioned, unsolicited, that when they have to do repairs, standard repairs on the walls, let's say.
Yes,
Occasionally, they do find things in the wall
yes, they do.
that is unanticipated, right? So, asbestos.
Mhm.
So, I mean, his message was, we just don't know what we don't know.
Correct. He indicated to me that there were hazardous materials in the building, but you're right, without doing a complete hazard assessment of the building, it's impossible to know what might be there.
Right.
So basically, your two choices are, depending upon what the plan is for that space, either you fully gut it back to the studs, clean all that material out, or leave it.
Right.
As long as it's encased and you're not working with it or disturbing it,
Not fireable.
it is allowed to stay.
Not roofing back to the studs will limit what you can do.
Yeah, we're getting into a lot of detail.
Well,
It's good, it's gonna have to be gotten into.
Let's get the NBC in charge
Yeah.
here. And
Let's invite the NBC, I agree, to the Board of Selectmen meeting, have a conversation with Paul and
Do
his
you think
team.
it's best to write up a chart or something? And we can, you know,
Well-
I don't think that in your spare time.
Get through the town meeting tomorrow first.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, does anybody have anything else to add?
No, I don't.
I apologize for scheduling this at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I do believe there is urgency to this. August is coming fast and we're sitting here without a plan. So I am thankful of everybody's time and for all the energy and commitment that you've put forth so far. I am hopeful for the repurposing of it. Again, just for the record, I do see a Parks and Rec / library facility there, and I want it to be a wonderful community space.
While we're still publicly, you took it that I was calling you a liar, I apologize, I didn't mean to intend that. I thought we were gonna have a working meeting of the professionals and get into the guts of this as professionals without a full group here, and it would've been better to do that and actually go through the building and let's go look at the windows.
Well,
Let's
that
go
can
and-
still happen,
Please,
but the
please.
three of us need to hash through this with the people involved. He's getting hit with
But we
different
can
things.
give you better-
He's getting- he
We
has-
can give you better information if the professionals actually get into the weeds of it and come back to you and report and say, yes, we saw 14 windows that need to replace. Yes, we saw, you
I
know,
think we also
What did-
need
what
to
do you-
seek the advice of the people who've been maintaining the building over I mean, they're not sitting in the room now, but we need to seek their advice. I'm just getting into the
Certainly.
building now and reading reports. I'm just going by the Tech Town report, but the people who have been maintaining the building, those are the people we have to ask the questions, really. I mean,
There's,
you know.
there's an issue with procedure because once the three of us, I agree with you, it'd be nice
Yeah.
to just be able to sit down, but once the three of us get together, it is a meeting. Now, we would either have to go into executive session, which I don't think this would be.
I didn't invite you through.
I did.
You
I-
did,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
I got you right away. Let's keep those pesky people
What?
out.
I
Yeah.
wanted these gentlemen.
I would rather
You know,
do this
and
first.
You
Sheldon,
can meet
that-
with them anytime.
No, I would
Kevin.
rather do
Let's-
this, I'm glad Terry did it this way, I'd
Yeah.
rather do it this way.
Do you know what's what?
Just so we know, so we have at least it might be a small foundation, but at least something to start on. And then we can work down to where, you know, it's more detailed and a walkthrough or something like that, so I do appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn,
How do you make a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.